Okay, so what I want to go into is really separating out what makes Guided Chaos unique. You know, we hear this all the time. People ask us questions about what is our art all about? What is it we do? What is it like? What style is it like? You know, what type of philosophy it has. So here's the truth. Guided Chaos is completely different. It's completely separate art that stands alone. Now, while yes, there are a lot of similarities that you will find in other martial arts within Guided Chaos, but that's because the human body is the human body. In other words, what we focus on, rather than a group of techniques, we focus on principles of body movement dynamics. We focus on how the human body actually moves under dynamic conditions. Because when you're fighting for your life, the reality is there is no time for any type of stylized technique or pre-sanctified or preordained type of technique. So for example, one of the things that goes on in a lot of martial arts systems is people get into stances, whether the leg has to be forward, the leg has to be back, or one leg is forward, the other leg is back, or their hands are like this, or their hands are like this, or they tell you, okay, in situations where a person's come to the side, then you turn your body like this. The reality is the fight comes from everywhere and out of nowhere. More importantly, when you're in a situation where you're fighting for your life, the person you're fighting has no idea of what you can or can't do. And he doesn't care, he's just trying to hurt you. So one of the things you always hear in a lot of martial arts, you know, whether it's, you know, karate, kung fu, or any of the other internal arts, one of the things you always hear is that you hear people say, well, size doesn't matter. Size means nothing. If you have these techniques and you master these techniques, you can defeat any opponent. Okay, that's just not true. That's not realistic. So for example, you can have a gentleman like this, and say, for example, you decide as you're, you know, training, use some type of flowy hands kind of thing. So here's the problem though. At some point, if it's a real fight, I have to try to hit him. And because of the fact that if he doesn't cooperate, it becomes very difficult to deal with somebody who's just physically stronger than you or much larger than you. The reality is because we focus on principles of body movement dynamics, rather than standing in front of someone who is much bigger, much stronger, has greater reach, you want to learn, as we like to say, continue, to be unavailable yet unavoidable. I want to be everywhere, anywhere else, except standing right in front of an individual like this. The other thing you'll see in a lot of martial arts is they'll want you to try to think that you can block, say, the strikes of a person this size. Except for one problem. If he's throwing a punch, and I'm sorry, see, first of all, see, he didn't cooperate. See, what you were supposed to do is, you were supposed to throw it right here. So that, no, you just punch me in the arm, that's going to hurt me. No, so you're supposed to be here, so then I can block it confidently, and then I can rotate, turn over, and hit him, and of course, he's supposed to go off into the sunset. The point is, when you're having to fight for your life, and you have to deal with somebody who's much more physically imposing than you are, you cannot wrap your mind into an idea. You have to be able to move freely, to be able to sit anywhere that you need to be in the fight. One of the other things I want to discuss, if you've studied any kind of internal art, you have two types of sensitivity: our ability to judge spatial awareness or spatial relationships, and then our ability to be able to kinesthetically feel another human being. One of the problems, though, that goes on in a lot of other arts, you're moving with another person, you're flowing, you're practicing this, and all of a sudden you feel an opening. So instead of me taking the obvious opening and striking from here, I'm supposed to somehow do some kind of pre-sanctioned technique in spite of the fact that the logical answer was to just hit from here. This is wasteful motion. There's no need to do those things, but yet these are the things that are taught. And then, of course, if you get outside of those things, then everybody admonishes you for breaking with the technique, or if you get defeated in a fight, they say, well, of course you didn't do the technique correctly, so that's why you got defeated. No, your brain does not work that way. If his hand is here and my hand is next to his hand, wherever they may be, I know where his hands are. I don't need to guess. If I feel an opening there, I can automatically feel that. There's no need for me to try to do something cool or exotic in here, because it's just unnecessary movement. More importantly, the other person in a real fight gets a vote. Real attacks are violent and fast and hard. They're not set up. You don't have time to stand in front of a person. Even if I have this opportunity to get in front of a person, can I make this work? He's just coming in on me. Oh, I'm sorry. See, he has under no obligation to cooperate with me. So I have to have the ability to be able to use whatever I'm going to do to basically get out of the way. Another thing I want to discuss, and that is The way you train is going to be the way you fight. It's just that simple. So for example, if you're training and pushing, so we're in here, we're flowing, and I'm training to push, and I push, he pushes. Here's the problem. In a real fight, if you push people, all you're doing is just hanging out in the fight. You're playing a game. You're not really fighting. The reality is in a real fight, you need to be able to hit. You need to be able to hit hard and fast. But you need to be able to hit in a manner where you have your whole body behind it as you're striking. In order to do that, and in order to develop that ability, you need to be able to also move and pretty much create as you go along. You have to be able to adapt and flow as you're hitting, creating what you need, where you need it, when you need it. Sport fighting, it's all well and good, but there are rules that govern what you can do. So boxing, MMA, any kind of point karate, any kind of point fighting, it's all well and good, and that's okay in sport, where there are rules that govern how much you can do. But in the real world, the other person's just going to be swinging on you. You have to learn to deal with the chaos of a real fight. A real fight is utter and complete chaos. Any attempt to try to impose form or structure on a real fight is only going to get you killed. The other thing is, what if you have more than one person? The problem here now is okay, what do I do? Do I push this guy and then push this guy away? Assuming I'm going to even be able to do that. What's going to happen is, as soon as the fight's on, whenever you guys, it's just on. There's no time to sit there and think you're going to be able to play these games, step, flow, or do any of these things. All I can do if they're really fighting is I got to protect my head, and then I got to start hitting. So in Guided Chaos, in order to be able to learn to hit and strike from every possible position and deal with the chaos, you have to train that way. As you train that way, and as you're moving with another person, you learn by dealing with their emotion how to be unavailable, unavoidable within the fight. So as I'm moving, what I'm doing here is an exercise we call contact flow. It helps me develop a free-flowing ability to be able to deal with another person's motion based on my sensitivity. However, if I put myself into a box of like a sportive mindset, like a fight, like a boxer, or if I'm trying to do sport karate, the problem with that is I've now limited my own freedom of action. I've limited my own freedom of movement. More importantly, he's under no obligation to play by game. When you try to structure the fight, all you do is limit yourself. Remember, the fight comes from everywhere and out of nowhere. So as I'm moving, like I said, I don't want to get myself into a box. You don't want to learn to put yourself into a box. So I even do something stylized like you see in many popular Kung Fu systems. The problem is once you start going into some type of stylized type of position to fight from, you limit your own freedom of action, the range of motion, and it's too easy for someone just to be able to throw you around, take your balance, hit you, strike from any position.